The woman appeared at the edge of San Andreas, Texas, like a mirage in the scorching July heat, her dark clothing dusty and worn, carrying nothing but a weathered saddlebag and secrets behind her green eyes. Lucas Sterling watched from the front porch of his ranch house as she walked past the property line, her steps measured and deliberate despite what must have been exhaustion. Most drifters who came through this part of Texas in 1883 were men, desperate and dangerous, looking for work or trouble depending on their circumstances. A woman traveling alone was rare enough to catch his attention, and something about the way she carried herself, straight-backed and proud despite her obvious fatigue, made him set down his coffee and stand. She did not look his direction, did not acknowledge the ranch house or the corrals where his horses grazed in the afternoon sun. She simply kept walking toward the small town that lay another mile down the dusty road, her dark hair tied back in a simple braid, her boots kicking up small clouds with each step. Lucas found himself walking toward the fence without quite deciding to do so. He was not a man who involved himself in the business of strangers. The last 3 years since his father's death had taught him to keep to himself, to focus on the ranch and the horses he bred and trained. Getting involved with people, caring about their stories, only led to disappointment. He had learned that lesson the hard way, but something made him call out. "Water's a long way off if you're heading into town." She stopped. For a moment he thought she might ignore him and keep walking, but then she turned. Up close, even with the distance of the fence between them, he could see she was younger than he had first thought, probably around his own age of 26. Her face was sunburned across the cheeks and nose, and there was a wariness in her eyes that spoke of hard experiences. "I'll make it," she said. Her voice was hoarse, probably from thirst, but there was steel in it. "Suit yourself." Lucas should have left it at that, should have turned around and gone back to his porch, back to his coffee and his solitude. Instead, he heard himself say, "But there's a pump right here and the water's cold. No charge for basic human decency." She studied him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing her options, calculating risks. Finally, she nodded once and walked toward the gate. Lucas opened it for her, careful to keep his movements slow and unthreatening. He had handled enough skittish horses to recognize the signs in a person too. The pump stood in the yard between the house and the barn, its handle worn smooth from years of use. Lucas worked it a few times until the water rang clear and cold, then stepped back. The woman moved forward and cupped her hands under the flow, drinking deeply. She did not stop until she had drunk her fill, then splashed water on her face and neck, heedless of how it darkened her dust-covered shirt. When she finally straightened, some of the tension had left her shoulders. "Thank you," she said. "You got a name?" Lucas asked. She hesitated. "Kate, just Kate for now." She met his eyes directly, and there was a challenge in them, daring him to push further. He did not. "Lucas Sterling. I run this ranch. You looking for work in town? Maybe. Is there any to be had? Depends on what you can do. San Andreas is not big, but we get enough travelers through that the boarding house usually needs help. The general store might be looking too." He paused, then added, "If you know horses, I could use an extra hand. Lost my ranch hand 2 weeks ago when he decided to try his luck in the California goldfields." Kate's expression shifted slightly, something like interest flickering in her eyes. "I know horses. Most people say that. Few actually do. I do." There was no boast in her words, just simple fact. Lucas gestured toward the nearest corral where 3 horses stood in the shade of an old oak. "The bay gelding there, the one with the white socks. Tell me what you see." She walked to the fence, and Lucas followed, watching her carefully. Kate leaned against the rail and studied the horse for a good minute before speaking. Favoring his left front leg, Not bad enough to be fully lame, but there's something bothering him. Given the way he's standing, I would guess a stone bruise or possibly the beginning of an abscess. Needs his hoof checked and probably packed if it is a bruise. Lucas felt his eyebrows rise. She was right. He had noticed the slight favoring just that morning and had been planning to check the hoof before evening chores. Good eye. Like I said, I know horses. She turned back to him. If you are serious about the work, I am interested, but I need to know the terms, room and board or just wages. There is a room in the barn above the tack room. It is not fancy, but it is clean and dry. 3 meals a day eaten at the house. $10 a month in wages, paid at the end of each month. Work is sunrise to sundown, 6 days a week. Sundays are your own. It was a fair offer, better than most ranch hands got, and they both knew it. Kate nodded slowly. And you will not ask questions about where I came from or why I am here. That should have been a warning sign. Should have made him reconsider the offer. Instead, Lucas found himself saying, a person's past is their own business. I care about whether you can do the work and whether you will stick around long enough to make hiring you worthwhile. Then I accept. Kate held out her hand. Lucas shook it. Her grip was firm, her palm calloused. Whatever her story was, she had done physical work before. Can you start today? Soon as you show me where to put my things. The room above the tack room was small but well maintained. Lucas had used it for storage since his last hand left, but it still had a bed frame with a corn husk mattress, a small table, and a chair. A window on the western wall let in light and air. He helped her carry up some bedding from the house, then left her to settle in while he went to start the evening chores. By the time he had fed the chickens and checked on the horses in the far pasture, the sun was starting its descent toward the horizon. He found Kate in the barn, already examining the bay gelding's hoof. She had the horse's leg propped on her thigh, bent at the knee, studying the frog and sole carefully. You were right, Lucas said. Stone bruise. Looks like it. Had a rock wedged in here pretty good. The bruising is not too bad yet. She set the hoof down gently and straightened, brushing dirt from her hands. You got any ichthymol ointment in the tack room? Second shelf. She nodded and went to get it, moving with an efficiency that suggested familiarity with barn layouts. While she was gone, Lucas stroked the gelding's neck, speaking softly. Seems you and I both found help today, old boy. Kate returned with the ointment and some cotton padding. Together they treated the hoof and wrapped it, working in companionable silence. When they finished, Lucas showed her the rest of the barn, pointing out where the feed was stored, which horses needed what kind of care, and the general routine he followed. Supper's at 6, he said as they walked back toward the house. Hope you like stew because that is about all I know how to make. I can cook, Kate offered. If you want me to take that over, I do not mind. Better than eating burned stew. Lucas laughed, surprised at how easily she had pulled that reaction from him. It is not burned, just not very good. Then let me help. I am being paid room and board after all. Might as well make the board edible. The kitchen in Lucas's house was large and well equipped, clearly designed by someone who had once loved to cook. Lucas watched as Kate moved around it, familiarizing herself with where things were kept, checking the pantry and the cold cellar. She worked with quiet competence, and within the hour, she had transformed his mediocre stew into something that actually smelled appealing, adding herbs and adjusting the seasonings. They ate at the old wooden table that dominated the kitchen, the silence between them not quite comfortable, but not hostile either. Lucas found himself wanting to ask questions, wanting to know what brought a woman like Kate to his door, why she carried herself like someone always ready to run, what had put that guarded look in her eyes. But he had promised not to pry, and he was a man who kept his word. "This is good," he said instead, gesturing at his bowl. "Really good. My mother taught me," Kate said, then seemed to regret the words as if she had revealed more than she intended. She must have been a good cook. She was good at a lot of things. Kate's voice had gone quiet, and Lucas recognized grief when he heard it. "I am sorry," he said simply. She looked up at him, surprise flickering across her face. "What for?" "Loss. I hear it in your voice. I know what it sounds like. Lost my father 3 years back and my mother when I was 16. Kate's expression softened slightly. "I am sorry too, then." They finished the meal in silence, but something had shifted between them, some small acknowledgement of shared experience. After they cleaned up, Kate excused herself to her room, and Lucas sat on his porch in the gathering darkness, listening to the night sounds and wondering what exactly he had gotten himself into. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Kate proved to be as good with horses as she had claimed, maybe better. She had a way with the difficult ones, the horses that were skittish or stubborn. Lucas watched her work with a young mare he had been struggling to saddle break, saw the patience and firmness she used, never harsh but never backing down either. Within 3 days, the mare was letting Kate saddle her without fuss. "How did you learn that?" Lucas asked one afternoon as they cooled down horses after a training session. Kate shrugged. "Practice, mostly, and watching. Horses will tell you what they need if you pay attention." "Where did you work before? You are too good at this to be self-taught." She tensed, and Lucas immediately regretted the question. But after a moment, she answered. "My father had a ranch in New Mexico territory, not as big as this one, but big enough. He taught me everything about horses before he died. Recently, 2 years ago." She did not elaborate, and Lucas did not push, but over the following weeks, small details emerged. Kate mentioned a brother once, then went silent when Lucas asked about him. She talked about growing up in the territory, about the landscape and the weather, but never about people. She would sometimes go quiet in the middle of a task, her eyes distant, as if she was seeing something Lucas could not. He found himself watching her more than he should. The way she moved with unconscious grace, the way sunlight caught in her dark hair when she took it down from its braid at the end of the day. The way she laughed, rare but genuine, when one of the foals did something particularly foolish. The way she sang sometimes while she worked, old Mexican ballads in a clear, sweet voice that carried across the paddocks. It was not professional, this interest. She worked for him, depended on him for her livelihood and her shelter. He should keep his distance, maintain the proper boundaries between employer and employee. But Lucas found those boundaries harder and harder to maintain as August heat gave way to the slightly cooler days of September. One afternoon, as they were repairing a section of fence that had been damaged during a summer storm, Kate suddenly spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you offer me work that first day? You did not know anything about me. I could have been anyone." Lucas hammered in a nail before answering, using the time to think about his response. "Honestly, I am not entirely sure. You looked like you needed help and I had work that needed doing. Seemed straightforward enough. Most men would not hire a woman for ranch work. Most men are fools." He paused. "And maybe I am too, but for different reasons. You have proven you can do the work. That is all that matters to me." Kate was quiet for a moment. "No one else in town seems to think that way. I went in to buy supplies last week, and the way people looked at me, you would think I had grown a second head." It was true. San Andreas was a small town, and a woman doing ranch work was unusual enough to cause gossip. Lucas had heard some of it himself when he had gone in for supplies the previous Saturday. Speculation about who Kate was, where she came from, what her relationship with Lucas might be. He had ignored it, but apparently Kate had not been so lucky. "Small towns talk," he said. "They will find something new to gossip about soon enough. Unless I give them something real to talk about." There was something in Kate's voice, a bitterness that made Lucas look up from the fence post he was securing. "Kate, if someone is giving you trouble, no, nothing like that, just talk." She met his eyes. "But I want you to know, before anyone says anything, before you hear stories, my father did not just die. He was killed. Shot by a man named Raymond Dalton over a land dispute. Dalton claimed my father drew first, and he had witnesses who backed his story, even though everyone knew it was a lie." Lucas set down his hammer. "And your brother tried to get justice the only way he knew how, went after Dalton with a gun, got himself hanged for murder." Her voice was steady, but Lucas could hear the pain beneath it. "So I left, sold what was left of the ranch for barely anything, took what I could carry, and started drifting. Been moving from town to town for the last 6 months, working where I can, staying quiet, trying not to draw attention." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you have been decent to me, and you deserve to know who you have working for you. If Dalton or any of his people come looking, if they somehow track me here, I do not want you caught in the middle. I will leave before that happens." Lucas considered her words carefully. What she was describing was not her fault, not really. She had lost her family to violence and injustice, things that were all too common in this part of the country. The law was supposed to protect people, but too often it protected those with money and influence instead. "First," he said slowly, "thank you for trusting me with this. Second, if anyone comes looking to cause you trouble, they will have to go through me first. This is my land, and you are under my protection as long as you work here. Lucas, you do not understand, I understand perfectly. You have done nothing wrong. You are trying to survive and move on with your life. I will not turn you out because you have a complicated past." He picked up his hammer again. "Now, are we going to finish this fence or stand here talking all afternoon?" Kate stared at him for a long moment, and he thought he saw the shine of tears in her eyes before she blinked them away. "You are either the kindest man I have ever met or the most foolish." "Probably both." He gave her a small smile. "Now hand me those nails." They worked the rest of the afternoon in comfortable silence, but something had changed between them. Kate seemed more relaxed, less guarded. She started joining Lucas on the porch in the evenings after supper, and they would talk about the horses, about plans for the ranch, about nothing in particular. Lucas learned that she loved reading but had not owned a book since leaving New Mexico. He brought down some of his mother's old novels from the shelf in the parlor, watched Kate's face light up when he offered them to her. "Are you sure?" she asked, handling the leather-bound volumes like they were precious. "My mother would be happy to know someone was enjoying them again." She loved to read, used to order books from back east whenever my father went into San Antonio on business. Kate ran her fingers over the embossed title. "I will take good care of them. I know you will." October brought cooler weather and the start of the fall work. Lucas had contracts to deliver trained horses to several ranches in the region, and he needed to make sure each animal was ready. Kate worked alongside him, and together they managed to prepare 6 horses for sale, each one well-trained and responsive. The day they delivered the horses to the first ranch, a sprawling operation north of San Andreas, the owner looked surprised to see Kate handling one of the horses. "You let your wife do ranch work?" he asked Lucas. "She is not my wife, she is my employee," Lucas said evenly. "And she is better with horses than most men I have known." The rancher looked skeptical but did not argue, especially after he saw how well trained the horses were. He paid Lucas the agreed-upon price and complimented the quality of the work. On the ride back to the ranch, Kate was quiet. "You did not have to defend me like that," she finally said as they approached the property. "I was not defending you, I was stating facts." Lucas glanced over at her. "Does it bother you that people assume we are married?" "No, yes, I do not know," she sighed. "It just makes things complicated. More complicated than they already are." That surprised a laugh out of her. "Fair point." As they unsaddled their horses, Lucas found himself thinking about the rancher's assumption. Would it be so terrible being married to Kate? The thought had crossed his mind more than once over the past months, though he had tried to push it away. She was his employee, and he did not want to make her uncomfortable or feel pressured. But he could not deny that he had come to care for her, that his day felt more complete when she was near. He was falling in love with her, he realized. Maybe had been falling for a while now without acknowledging it. The realization should have scared him, but instead it felt right, like something settling into place. But did she feel the same way? Kate had shared her past with him, had trusted him with her story, but that did not necessarily mean her feelings went beyond friendship and gratitude. He would have to be careful, would have to make sure not to put her in an awkward position. The decision was taken out of his hands a week later. They had gone into San Andreas together to buy supplies, and Lucas was settling the bill at the general store while Kate looked at fabric. The store owner, a talkative man named Peter Morrison, leaned across the counter and said in a low voice, "Sterling, you know people are talking about you and that woman." Lucas kept his expression neutral. "Let them talk. I am just saying, for her reputation and yours, you might want to consider making things official, or maybe finding her different accommodations. Having an unmarried woman living on your property, well, it does not look proper." "Her living arrangements are none of anyone's business," Lucas said, his voice cold. "Just trying to help. Some of the ladies in town, they have been saying things. Your mother was a respectable woman, God rest her soul. I just wonder what she would think." Lucas leaned forward, his hands flat on the counter. "My mother would think that Kate is a hard worker who deserves respect, not gossip. And if the ladies in town have nothing better to do than spread rumors, that is their problem, not mine." He took his change and his packages and walked out of the store, Kate following behind him. They loaded the supplies into the wagon in silence, and Lucas was about to climb up to the driver's seat when Kate touched his arm. "Wait," she said. "We need to talk about this." "There is nothing to talk about. People are always going to gossip." "Lucas, that man was right about one thing. My being at your ranch, living there, working there, it is affecting your reputation. You have lived in this town your whole life. I do not want to be the reason people turn their backs on you. I do not care what people think." "Yes, you do. You should." She looked around at the quiet Main Street, at the few people who were out on this weekday afternoon. "Maybe I should move on. There are other towns, other places I could find work." The thought of Kate leaving hit Lucas like a physical blow. "No, Lucas, no," he said again, more firmly. "I do not want you to leave. Unless you want to go, unless you are unhappy here, I want you to stay. It is not about being unhappy. You have been kinder to me than anyone has in a long time, but I do not want to cause problems for you." Lucas took a deep breath. This was not how he had planned to do this, standing in the middle of town with people potentially watching, but he could not let this moment pass. What if we made it official? What if the gossips had nothing to talk about because we actually were married? Kate stared at him. "What?" "Marry me, Kate. Not because of what people say, not to protect reputations, but because I want you to stay. Because I have come to care about you more than I probably should have let myself. Because you are the best thing that has happened to me in 3 years, and the thought of you leaving feels like losing another piece of my family." Her eyes were wide, shocked. "Lucas, you do not mean that. You are just reacting to what that man said." "I mean every word." He took her hand, not caring who saw. "I know this is sudden. I know you probably do not feel the same way, and if you do not, then we will forget I said anything and you can keep working at the ranch and people can gossip all they want. But if there is any chance, any possibility that you might feel something for me too, then I am asking you to consider it." Kate's hand trembled in his. "This is crazy. Maybe. But so is hiring a woman you just met to work on your ranch. So is trusting her with your horses and your home. I have been doing crazy things since the moment you walked past my fence, Kate. Might as well keep going." She laughed, a shaky sound that was half sob. "I do not know what to say. Say yes. Or say you need time to think about it. Just do not say you are leaving." "Lucas, I am not the kind of woman men marry. I have too much history, too many complications. You deserve someone respectable, someone the town would approve of. I deserve someone who makes me happy. Someone who understands the work I do, who loves horses the way I do, who can hold her own and does not need to be protected from the world. That is you, Kate. You are exactly what I need, even if I did not know it until you showed up." Tears were sliding down her cheeks now. "I do not want to hurt you. What if my past catches up to me? What if Dalton or his men find me? Then we will deal with it together. But Kate, you cannot keep running forever. At some point you have to decide to stand your ground and build a life. Let this be that point. Let me stand with you." She pulled her hand free, and for a terrible moment Lucas thought she was going to walk away. Instead, she stepped closer and reached up to touch his face, her fingers gentle against his cheek. "You really mean it. This is not just about protecting me or solving a problem. You actually want this." "I want you," he said simply. "I think I have wanted you since I saw you walk past my fence looking like you were ready to take on the world all by yourself. I just did not know how to tell you." Kate stood on her toes and kissed him, soft and brief, right there on the main street of San Andreas with half the town probably watching. When she pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. "Yes, if you are sure, if this is really what you want, then yes, I will marry you." Lucas felt like his heart might burst. He pulled her close, hugging her tight, not caring about propriety or gossip anymore. "We can do it as soon as possible. There is a pastor in town and we can get a license at the county office." "Wait, slow down." Kate laughed, pushing back slightly to look at him. "Can we at least take a few days? I would like to have a decent dress, maybe fix my hair, not look like I just came in from mucking out stalls. You could wear a feed sack and you would still be beautiful." She blushed, actually blushed, and Lucas realized he had never seen her do that before. "You are definitely crazy, Lucas Sterling. Crazy about you, Kate Reeves." He said her last name like a question, and she nodded, confirming it. Kate Reeves, for a few more days at least. "Then Kate Sterling, if that sounds acceptable to you." "It sounds perfect." They stood there for another moment, just looking at each other, the packages forgotten in the wagon. Finally, Kate said, "We should probably head back. We have a lot to plan, and knowing small-town gossip, the news will be all over San Andreas by supper time." She was right. By the time they got back to the ranch, Lucas could see that things had shifted between them in more ways than one. The careful distance they had maintained, the professional boundaries, all of that had dissolved. Kate sat closer to him on the wagon seat, and when he helped her down, his hands lingered at her waist longer than necessary. Over the next few days, they made their plans. The wedding would be simple, at the small church in town with just a few witnesses. Kate went to the general store and bought fabric to make a dress, pale blue calico that brought out her eyes. Lucas cleaned the house from top to bottom, moved Kate's things from the barn to the bedroom across the hall from his own, and tried not to think too hard about the fact that after the wedding she would be moving into his room, into his bed. The pastor, Reverend Thomas, was happy to perform the ceremony. He was an older man who had known Lucas's parents and had baptized Lucas as a child. When Lucas and Kate met with him to arrange the details, he looked at them with kind eyes and said, "I can see you two care for each other. That is the most important thing. The rest will work itself out with time and patience." On the morning of the wedding, a clear Saturday in late October, Lucas stood in front of the small mirror in his bedroom and tried to tie his tie for the fourth time. His hands were shaking. He was getting married today, to Kate, to the woman who had walked into his life 4 months ago and changed everything. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," he called. The door opened, but it was not Kate. It was Sarah Morrison, the storekeeper's wife, a woman Lucas had known his entire life. She had been his mother's friend, and she was one of the few people in town who had been kind to Kate despite the gossip. "I came to help Kate get ready," Sarah said, "but I wanted to talk to you first if you have a moment." "Of course." Lucas gestured to the chair by the window. Sarah sat, smoothing her skirts. "I know things have not been easy for you two with the talk in town. I want you to know that I think you are doing the right thing. That girl, she is special. She has been through more than most people could handle, and she has come out of it strong. You are lucky to have found each other." "I am the lucky one," Lucas said. "You both are," Sarah smiled. "Your mother would have liked her, I think. She always admired people with backbone, and Kate certainly has that. Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. Now, let me help you with that tie before you strangle yourself." Sarah stood and deftly tied his tie, patting his shoulder when she finished. "There. Now you look like a proper groom. Kate is just about ready, so you should head over to the church. We will bring her along shortly." The church was small and simple, with wooden pews and plain glass windows. Lucas stood at the front with Reverend Thomas, his heart pounding. A handful of people had come, including the Morrisons and a few neighbors from nearby ranches. It was not a large gathering, but it felt right. Then the door opened, and Kate walked in. She had transformed the simple calico into something beautiful. The dress fitted at the waist and falling in soft folds to the floor. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, held back with small flowers that Sarah must have helped her find. But it was her face that took Lucas's breath away, the way she was smiling at him, nervous and happy and absolutely radiant. She walked down the aisle alone, no one to give her away, and Lucas felt a pang of sorrow for all she had lost. But when she reached him and took his hand, she squeezed it tight, and he knew they would be each other's family from now on. The ceremony was brief and traditional. They spoke their vows clearly, their voices steady despite the weight of the promises they were making. Lucas slipped a simple gold band onto Kate's finger, one that had belonged to his mother. When Reverend Thomas pronounced them married and told Lucas he could kiss his bride, Lucas cupped Kate's face in his hands and kissed her gently, reverently, sealing their commitment. The small group applauded, and Lucas and Kate walked back down the aisle together, married now, bound by law and faith, and something deeper that Lucas could not quite name. They had a small celebration at the ranch, with Sarah bringing food and the neighbors contributing what they could. It was not fancy, but it was warm and genuine, and Lucas could see Kate relaxing, laughing, truly happy for the first time since he had known her. As the sun set and their guests began to leave, Sarah pulled Kate aside. Lucas watched from across the room as the older woman spoke to his new wife, saw Kate nod and hug Sarah tightly. When everyone had gone and they were alone, Lucas asked, "What did she say to you?" "She told me I was part of the community now, that I had people who cared about me." Kate's eyes were bright. "It has been a long time since I felt like I belonged anywhere." "You belong here," Lucas said, pulling her close. "With me, for as long as you want to stay." "How about forever?" Kate asked, smiling up at him. "Forever sounds perfect." That night, in the quiet privacy of their bedroom, Lucas and Kate came together as husband and wife. There was nervousness at first, a natural awkwardness as they learned each other in this new way. But there was also tenderness, patience, and a growing passion that left them both breathless. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Kate's head on his chest, Lucas felt more content than he had in years. "I love you," he said softly. "I should have said it before, but I love you, Kate." "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have for a while now. I was just afraid to admit it, afraid that if I let myself love you, something would happen to take you away. I am not going anywhere, and neither are you. We are in this together now." Kate pressed a kiss to his chest. "Together. I like the sound of that." The months that followed their wedding were among the happiest of Lucas's life. He and Kate worked the ranch as partners, building the business together. Kate's skill with horses proved invaluable, and word spread about the quality of the training they provided. They began getting requests from ranches all over the region, more work than they could easily handle. "We are going to need to hire help," Kate said one evening in January as they reviewed their accounts. "We have more contracts than we can fulfill with just the two of us." "I know. I have been thinking about that." Lucas set down his pencil. "What would you think about bringing on a younger hand, someone we could train up properly? There are always boys looking for ranch work, and we could teach one the right way to handle horses." Kate nodded thoughtfully. "That could work. As long as we find someone willing to learn and not just someone who thinks they already know everything." They put out word in town that they were looking for help, and within a week, they had their answer. A young man named Daniel, 19 and eager to learn, came to the ranch looking for work. He was respectful and hard-working, and Kate took to teaching him with the same patience she showed the horses. Lucas watched with pride as his wife demonstrated techniques, explained the reasoning behind different approaches, and gradually shaped Daniel into a competent horseman. Spring came early that year, and with it came news that Kate was pregnant. She told Lucas one morning as they were getting ready to start the day's work, her hand pressed against her still flat stomach, her expression a mix of joy and apprehension. "Are you sure?" Lucas asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Pretty sure. All the signs are there." She looked up at him. "Are you happy about this?" "Happy?" Lucas picked her up and spun her around, making her laugh and swat at his shoulder. "Kate, I am thrilled. We are going to be parents." "We are," she said, still laughing. "Though if you keep spinning me like that, I am going to be sick on your boots." He set her down carefully, immediately solicitous. "Are you feeling all right? Do you need to rest? Maybe you should not be working with the horses for a while." "Lucas, I am pregnant, not fragile. I will be fine for a good while yet." But she was smiling, clearly pleased by his concern. They told Daniel the news the next day, and the young man congratulated them enthusiastically. "Does this mean you will be taking it easier, Mrs. Sterling?" he asked Kate. "Not for a few months yet, and even then I will still be around to make sure you are doing things properly." She said it with warmth, and Daniel grinned. As Kate's pregnancy progressed, Lucas found himself marveling at the changes. She remained active, insisting on doing her share of the work even as her belly grew round. He worried constantly, afraid something would go wrong, but Kate remained healthy and strong. Sarah Morrison visited regularly, bringing advice and baby clothes she had saved from when her own children were small. In late September, as the Texas heat finally began to break, Kate went into labor. Lucas sent Daniel racing into town to fetch the midwife while he stayed with Kate, holding her hand, talking her through the contractions. The midwife arrived with practiced efficiency and took over, shooing Lucas out of the bedroom. He paced the living room for hours, listening to the sounds from the bedroom, praying harder than he had in years. Finally, just as the sun was setting, he heard a different sound, The sharp, angry cry of a newborn. The midwife emerged a few minutes later, smiling. "You have a son, Mr. Sterling. A healthy boy with good lungs. Your wife did beautifully. You can go in and see them now." Lucas entered the bedroom on shaking legs. Kate was propped up against the pillows, exhausted but glowing, holding a small bundle wrapped in a blanket. She looked up as he approached, tears streaming down her face, and smiled the most beautiful smile he had ever seen. "Lucas, meet your son." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the blanket. The baby had stopped crying and was looking around with dark, unfocused eyes, his small fists waving. Lucas felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He is perfect," Lucas whispered. "You are perfect. I cannot believe we made this." "What should we name him?" Kate asked. They had discussed names over the past months, but had not decided on anything definite. Now, looking at his son, Lucas thought of his own father, of the man who had taught him everything about ranching and honor and hard work. "What do you think about James? After my father?" Kate's expression softened. "James Sterling. I love it. James Lucas Sterling if you want to include your name too." James Lucas Sterling. Lucas tested the name, found it felt right. "Welcome to the world, son." The next months were a blur of sleepless nights and constant wonder. James was a good baby, healthy and alert, and Lucas found himself completely besotted. He would hold his son for hours, just watching him sleep, marveling at the tiny fingers and the small sounds he made. Kate recovered quickly from the birth, and was soon back to her normal routine, though now with a baby strapped to her back in a carrier she had fashioned. She continued to work with the horses, training and managing the ranch alongside Lucas, proving that motherhood had not diminished her capabilities one bit. Daniel continued to work for them, and over time he became almost like family. He was devoted to the Sterlings and worked hard to learn everything they could teach him. By the time James was walking, Daniel had become skilled enough that Lucas felt comfortable leaving the ranch in his hands when necessary. One afternoon in early summer, when James was nearly 2 years old, a stranger rode up to the ranch. Lucas was working with a young stallion in the corral, and Kate was nearby with James when the man dismounted at the gate. He was older, probably in his 50s, with gray hair and a weathered face. He carried himself with authority but did not seem threatening. "Looking for Kate Reeves," he said. "Heard she might be here." Lucas felt Kate tense beside him. He handed the stallion's lead to Daniel and walked toward the gate, positioning himself between the stranger and his wife. "Who is asking?" "Name is Thomas Martinez. I was foreman on Kate's father's ranch back in New Mexico. Been looking for her for near about 3 years now." Kate stepped forward, James on her hip. "Thomas, is that really you?" The man's stern expression broke into a smile. "Kate, Lord girl, I have been searching half the territory for you. When you disappeared after your brother's death, I feared the worst. I had to leave. There was nothing left for me there, and I was afraid Dalton might come after me too." Kate's voice was cautious. "Why were you looking for me?" Thomas pulled an envelope from his coat pocket. "Because of this. It is the deed to your father's ranch, or what is left of it. Dalton tried to claim it, but it turns out his witnesses recanted their testimony before they died. Judge ruled that the shooting was murder, not self-defense. Dalton is in prison now, and the land reverted to your father's estate. As his only surviving heir, it belongs to you." Kate stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "I do not understand. The ranch was sold. I sold it before I left. You sold it to a man who was working for me at my instruction. I held it in trust, hoping I would find you someday." Thomas's expression was gentle. "Your father was a good man, Kate. He deserved better than what happened to him. I could not bring him justice while Dalton had power, but I could protect what was his until the truth came out. Lucas watched his wife's face cycle through a dozen emotions: shock, disbelief, hope, grief. He put his hand on her shoulder, a silent offer of support. "Kate, what do you want to do?" She looked up at him, then at James, then back at Thomas. "I do not know. My life is here now. I have a husband, a son, a home. The ranch in New Mexico, it is part of my past." "But it is also your inheritance," Thomas said gently. "Your father wanted you to have it, and it is good land, Kate, still productive. I have been keeping it running with a small crew, waiting for you to come home." "This is my home," Kate said firmly, gesturing at the ranch around them. "Texas is my home now." Thomas nodded slowly. "I understand, but the land is still yours. You could sell it properly this time, use the money however you see fit, or keep it as an investment. I would be happy to continue managing it if you want." Kate took the envelope, her hands shaking slightly. "Can I think about this? Talk it over with my husband, of course. I am staying at the boarding house in town. Take all the time you need." Thomas tipped his hat to Lucas. "You have got a good woman here, Mr. Sterling. Take care of her." "Always," Lucas replied. After Thomas left, Kate and Lucas sat on the porch while James played with wooden blocks at their feet. Kate held the envelope unopened in her lap, staring at it like it might contain answers to questions she had not asked. "I do not know what to do," she finally said. "That ranch, it holds so many memories. Good ones from when my parents were alive, terrible ones from what happened after. Part of me wants nothing to do with it, wants to just let it go. But another part feels like I owe it to my father to care about what he built." Lucas took her hand. "What do you want, Kate? Not what you think you should do, not what would honor your father or make sense financially. What does your heart say?" She was quiet for a long time. "My heart says that ranch was my past, but this one is my future. I do not want to go back to New Mexico. I do not want to leave here, leave you and James and the life we are building." "Then do not. Let Thomas keep managing it or sell it if that feels right. But Kate, that land represents your history, your family. Maybe someday James will want to know about his grandfather, about where his mother came from. Having that connection could matter." Kate looked at him with such love in her eyes that Lucas felt his breath catch. "How did I get so lucky to find you? I am pretty sure I am the lucky one. I was just a lonely cowboy before you showed up. A lonely cowboy who took a chance on a drifter." She smiled, then looked down at the envelope. "I think I want to keep the ranch but have Thomas manage it. Let it stay in the family. Let it be there if James ever wants to see where I came from. And maybe someday we could visit. Show him the mountains and the mesas, tell him about his grandparents. I think that is a good plan." Lucas squeezed her hand. "And whenever you are ready to make that trip, we will go together." Over the next few years, their life continued to grow and flourish. The ranch prospered, their reputation for quality horses spreading throughout Texas and beyond. Kate corresponded regularly with Thomas, receiving updates about the New Mexico property and managing it from afar. The income from both ranches provided them with financial security they had never expected. James grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved horses as much as his parents did. By the time he was 4, he was already learning to ride, sitting in front of Lucas on a gentle mare, squealing with delight. Kate would watch them with a smile, often with a hand resting on her stomach, pregnant with their second child. Their daughter arrived in the spring of 1888, a tiny, perfect girl they named Rebecca, after Kate's mother. Where James had been loud and active from birth, Rebecca was quiet and observant, her dark eyes taking in everything around her with solemn interest. Lucas fell in love all over again, with this small person who looked so much like Kate, and with Kate herself, as he watched her navigate motherhood with 2 young children. She managed it all with the same competence she brought to everything, running the household and still finding time to work with the horses, teach Daniel and the 2 additional hands they had hired, and love her family with her whole heart. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset while the children played in the yard, Kate leaned her head on Lucas's shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been? If I had walked past your ranch that day without stopping, if you had not offered me water?" "I try not to," Lucas admitted, "because the thought of not having you here, not having this life we have built, it is too painful to consider." "I was so lost back then," Kate said quietly. "I thought I would just keep drifting forever, never putting down roots, never trusting anyone enough to let them in. And then there you were, this stubborn cowboy who refused to let me push him away. I knew from the moment I saw you that you were special. I just had to convince you to give me a chance. Best decision I ever made." Kate turned her head to kiss his cheek. "Thank you, Lucas, for seeing past the drifter to the person underneath, for giving me a home and a family, for loving me. Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done." Lucas wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "You are exactly what I needed, Kate. You always were." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play, the horses grazing in the pasture, the land that was theirs stretching out under the wide Texas sky. This was home, Lucas thought. Not just the ranch or the house, but this feeling of completeness, of belonging. He had found it with Kate, and she had found it with him, 2 lost souls who had somehow managed to find each other in the vastness of the West. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and challenges. When James was 8 and Rebecca was 5, they finally made the trip to New Mexico to see Kate's childhood home. Thomas had kept the ranch in excellent condition, and Kate walked through it with tears streaming down her face, showing her children the room where she had grown up, the barn where her father had taught her about horses, the land that had shaped her. "Thank you for keeping this for me," she told Thomas before they left. "It means more than you know to have this piece of my family preserved. Your father would be proud of you, Kate, of the life you have built, the family you have raised. He always wanted you to be happy." When they returned to Texas, Kate was quieter than usual for a few days. Finally, she told Lucas, "I needed to see it again to make peace with what happened there. But I am glad our life is here. This is where I am meant to be." As their children grew, they each showed different interests and talents. James was passionate about the horses, eager to learn everything about training and breeding. Rebecca, to everyone's surprise, showed a talent for numbers and business, often helping Kate with the ranch accounts and planning. Lucas watched his family with deep satisfaction. This was what he had always wanted without knowing it. A partner who was his equal, children who were healthy and loved, a ranch that thrived through hard work and dedication. Kate had brought all of that into his life, transforming him from a lonely man going through the motions into someone who looked forward to each new day. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Lucas took Kate into San Andreas for dinner at the hotel restaurant, a rare night out without the children. As they sat across from each other, older and more settled than they had been as newlyweds but no less connected, Lucas raised his glass in a toast. "To the mysterious drifter who walked past my fence and changed my life forever." Kate laughed, her eyes sparkling in the candlelight. "To the cowboy who was stubborn enough not to let me keep walking." They clinked glasses, and Lucas felt the same surge of love and gratitude he had felt on their wedding day. Some people spent their whole lives searching for the right person, for the connection that made life meaningful. He had found it almost by accident, on a hot July day when a dust-covered woman had refused his first offer of help, but had accepted the second. "What are you thinking about?" Kate asked, smiling at him over her glass. "Just how lucky I am. How right everything turned out." "We are both lucky," Kate said. "But I think we also chose to be. You chose to offer me work when you did not have to. I chose to trust you when trust did not come easy. We chose each other, day after day, through the hard times and the good times. And I would choose you again every time." Lucas reached across the table to take her hand. "You are my home, Kate. You and the children and the life we have built together. Everything else is just details." Kate squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with emotion. "I love you, Lucas Sterling. I loved you when you were just my employer trying too hard not to show he cared. I loved you when you proposed to me in the middle of town. I love you now, and I will love you until the day I die." "That is a long time," Lucas said, his voice rough. "Not long enough." Kate stood and came around the table, and Lucas rose to meet her. They embraced right there in the restaurant, not caring who saw, lost in each other and the certainty of what they had found. The ride back to the ranch was peaceful, the night air cool and full of stars. When they arrived home, they paid the neighbor girl who had been watching the children and went to check on James and Rebecca, both sleeping soundly in their rooms. Then they retired to their own room, where they made love with the practiced ease of long familiarity, but also with the passion that had never dimmed between them. Afterward, Kate curled against Lucas's side, her hand resting over his heart. "Tell me something," she said sleepily. "That first day when you saw me walk past the fence, did you really think I was just a drifter?" Lucas considered the question. "Honestly, I did not know what to think. You were clearly traveling alone, clearly had been for a while. But there was something about the way you moved, the way you held yourself, that said you were more than just someone down on their luck. You had purpose, even if you were not sure what it was anymore." "I was running away," Kate said. "From my grief, from my past, from everything. I thought if I just kept moving, I would eventually find a place where the pain would not follow me. But you stopped here. You made me stop. You offered me something I had not had in a long time, a reason to stay in one place to try again." She pressed a kiss to his chest. "I thought I needed to keep drifting, but it turned out what I really needed was a stubborn cowboy who would not let me disappear." Lucas held her closer. "I am glad I was stubborn. Me too." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, safe and secure in the knowledge that they had found what so many people spent lifetimes searching for: a true partner, a genuine connection, a love that had weathered storms and emerged stronger. The years continued to unfold. James grew into a young man who took over more and more of the ranch operations, showing his father's steadiness and his mother's intuition with horses. Rebecca surprised everyone by announcing at 16 that she wanted to become a teacher, and Kate and Lucas supported her ambitions, sending her to the Teachers College in San Antonio. As they moved into their middle years, Lucas and Kate settled into a comfortable rhythm. They still worked the ranch together, though with more help now and with less of the physical strain falling on their own shoulders. They took trips to visit Rebecca in San Antonio and helped James as he began courting a young woman from a neighboring ranch. One afternoon, as they sat on their porch watching the sun set over the land they had built their life on, Lucas said, "Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life instead of something easier?" Kate looked at him with surprise. "Not for a single moment. Why would you ask that?" "Sometimes I think about what you gave up. Your family's ranch could have been your whole life. You could have found someone in New Mexico, stayed closer to your roots. Instead, you ended up here with me, working harder than most women ever have to, raising children in the middle of nowhere." Kate took his hand, her grip still strong despite the years. "Lucas Sterling, you listened to me. I did not give up anything. I found everything. This ranch, our children, this is not some consolation prize. This is the life I was meant to live, with the man I was meant to love. I would not trade a single day of it for anything. Even the hard days, the times when money was tight, when we lost horses to illness, when the drought hit and we did not know if we would make it through. Especially those days, Kate said firmly. Because those were the days that proved what we were made of, that showed us we could face anything as long as we faced it together. I am not afraid of hard work or difficult times, Lucas. I am only afraid of living a life without meaning, and you have given me more meaning than I ever thought possible. Lucas felt tears prick his eyes. Even after all these years, Kate could still move him with her honesty, her strength, her unwavering commitment to the life they had chosen. I love you, he said simply. More now than I did the day we married, and I loved you pretty fiercely even then. I know, I have always known. Kate leaned her head on his shoulder. We are growing old together, Lucas, exactly like we planned, not so old yet. We still have plenty of good years left. Plenty, Kate agreed. Years to see James settled with a family of his own, to watch Rebecca teach, to maybe add on to the house and get some more horses. Years to sit on this porch and watch the sunset and thank whatever fate brought me to your fence that day. They sat in peaceful silence, two people who had found each other against all odds and had built something lasting. The mysterious woman who had once been a drifter had found her home, and the lonely cowboy had found exactly what he needed. Someone to love, someone to share his life with, someone who understood him completely. As the years turned into decades, the Sterling Ranch became a landmark in the region, known for quality horses and fair dealing. Lucas and Kate became respected elders in the community, sought out for advice, and admired for the partnership they had maintained through all the years. Their children grew and had children of their own, filling the ranch with new life and energy. James took over the day-to-day operations of the ranch when Lucas was in his 60s, but Lucas still spent time in the barns and corrals, still had that special touch with difficult horses. Kate, her hair now silver but her eyes as sharp as ever, continued to manage the business side of things, her head for numbers and planning, ensuring the ranch's continued success. On the morning of their 40th wedding anniversary, Lucas woke to find Kate already awake beside him, watching him with soft eyes. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning. What are you doing awake so early, just thinking? 40 years, Lucas. 40 years since we stood in that church and promised to love each other forever. Best decision I ever made." Lucas reached for her hand, his fingers finding hers automatically, the gesture so familiar it was like breathing. "Mine too." Kate smiled. "Our children are planning a celebration later, you know. The whole family will be here, grandchildren and all. I know. James told me yesterday." Lucas pulled Kate closer. "But right now, in this moment, it is just us. Like it has always been, really. Just us against the world." "Not against the world, with the world," Kate corrected gently. "We have never been alone, Lucas. We have had each other, our children, this land, the community. We have been part of something bigger than ourselves." She was right, of course. Kate usually was. They had built a life that extended far beyond just the two of them, creating ripples that would continue long after they were gone. The ranch would pass to James and his children. Rebecca's teaching had influenced dozens of students who were now making their own ways in the world. The community they had helped build and strengthen would continue to thrive. But at the heart of all of it, at the very center, was the choice they had made 40 years ago to trust each other, to love each other, to build a life together. Everything else had flowed from that single decision. The celebration that afternoon was everything their children had promised. The house was full of family and friends, tables groaning with food, children running and playing while adults talked and laughed. Lucas stood on the porch at one point, watching it all, Feeling the weight of years and the lightness of joy in equal measure, Kate joined him, slipping her arm through his. Quite a crowd. All because you walked past my fence one day and I was smart enough to call out to you. All because a stubborn cowboy would not let me refuse his help, even when I was determined to do everything alone. Kate leaned against him. We have had a good life, haven't we? The best life. Lucas turned to look at her. This woman who had been his partner for 40 years, who had transformed from a wary drifter into the foundation of everything good in his world. Age had changed them both, softening some edges and sharpening others, but the essential truth remained. They loved each other completely and without reservation. Thank you, he said quietly, for stopping, for staying, for building this life with me. Thank you for seeing me, Kate replied. Not the drifter, not the woman with a complicated past, but me. The real me. You have always seen me, Lucas, and that is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. They kissed then, gentle and sweet, 40 years of love and partnership and shared life contained in that simple gesture. When they pulled apart, they saw their grandson watching them, a small boy of about 5 with James's coloring and Kate's sharp eyes. "Grandpa, why are you kissing Grandma?" he asked with the blunt curiosity of childhood. Lucas laughed. "Because I love her, and because she is the best thing that ever happened to me. Will I find someone like that when I grow up?" "If you are very, very lucky," Kate said, kneeling down to the boy's level despite her aging knees. "And if you are smart enough to recognize them when they come into your life, even if they show up in unexpected ways." The boy nodded solemnly, then ran off to join the other children in their games. Kate stood with a small groan and Lucas steadied her automatically, their bodies knowing how to support each other without thought. "We are getting old," Kate observed. "We are getting old together," Lucas corrected. "Just like we planned." As the sun set on their anniversary celebration, as the last guests departed, and their children cleaned up the remnants of the party, Lucas and Kate retired to their bedroom. They had started their life together in this house, in this room, 40 years ago. They had loved and fought and reconciled in this space, had comforted each other through losses and celebrated victories. It was their sanctuary, their haven, the place where they could always be just Lucas and Kate, stripped of all other roles and responsibilities. "What do you think happens next?" Kate asked as they settled into bed, her head finding its familiar place on his shoulder. "After all this, where do we go from here?" "We keep going," Lucas said. "We keep loving each other, keep being part of our families' lives, keep making each day count. And when our time comes, whenever that is, we will face it the same way we have faced everything else, together." "Together," Kate echoed. "I like the sound of that. I have always liked the sound of that." They fell asleep in each other's arms, two people who had found each other in the vastness of the Texas frontier and had created something beautiful and lasting. The mysterious woman who had once been a drifter was now a grandmother, a successful rancher, a pillar of her community. The lonely cowboy had become a patriarch, a respected horseman, a man whose life had been enriched beyond measure by the choice he had made to call out to a stranger 40 years ago. Their story was not one of grand adventures or dramatic rescues. It was simpler than that, and infinitely more profound. It was the story of two people who had chosen to see each other truly, to love each other completely, and to build a life together that honored both of them. It was the story of patience and partnership, of work and reward, of loss transformed into hope, and desperation transformed into purpose. As the seasons continued to turn and the years continued to pass, Lucas and Kate remained constant. They weathered the changes that age brought with the same determination they had brought to every other challenge. When Lucas's strength began to fail in his 70s, Kate was there to support him. When Kate's memory started to falter in her late 70s, Lucas was there to remind her of the stories they had lived together. On a cool autumn evening, much like the one when they had first married, Lucas and Kate sat on their porch for what would be one of the last times. Lucas was 82 now, Kate 81, and they both felt the weight of their years. But they also felt the satisfaction of a life well lived, of promises kept and love honored. "You remember what I said to you the day we met?" Lucas asked, his voice thin but clear. "About water being a long way off," Kate smiled, her hand finding his automatically. "And I said I would make it. I was always so determined to do everything by myself back then. You did not need to make it alone. That was what I was trying to tell you even then. You did not have to do everything by yourself. I know that now. You taught me that it is okay to need people, to let them in, to build something together instead of always standing alone." Kate's voice was soft, contemplative. "You gave me permission to stop running, Lucas. To stop being the drifter and become Kate Sterling instead." "You were always Kate Sterling," Lucas said. "From the moment I saw you, I just had to convince you of it." They sat in peaceful silence as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. The ranch stretched out around them, the land they had worked and loved and passed on to their children. Everything they had built together, every decision they had made, every challenge they had overcome, it all came down to this. Two people sitting together in the twilight, content in the knowledge that they had loved well and been loved in return. Lucas squeezed Kate's hand gently. "If I could do it all again, knowing everything that would happen, all the hard times and the good times, I would not change a single thing." "Neither would I," Kate said. "Not one moment, not one choice, not one second of the life we have built together." "You are exactly what I needed, Lucas Sterling. You always have been. And you are exactly what I needed, the mysterious woman who turned out to be everything." They stayed on the porch until the stars came out, until the night air grew too cool for their old bones. Then they went inside together, arm in arm, still supporting each other as they had for more than half a century. They had found each other against all odds, two lost souls who had somehow recognized their match in the other. And they had built something that would last far beyond their own years. A family, a legacy, a love story that their grandchildren would tell to their own grandchildren someday. That night, lying in bed with Kate's hand in his, Lucas thought about the journey they had taken together. From that first moment, when a dust-covered woman had walked past his fence to this final chapter of their lives, it had been an adventure more profound than any tale of gold rushes or gunfights. It had been the adventure of two people learning to love, to trust, to build a life that honored both of them. He thought she was a drifter, and in a way she was. But she had turned out to be so much more: a partner, a wife, a mother, a friend. She had turned out to be exactly what he needed, and he liked to think he had been exactly what she needed too. As Lucas drifted off to sleep, Kate's breathing soft and steady beside him, he felt a deep sense of peace. Whatever time they had left, whether it was years or days, they would face it together. And when the end came, as it must for everyone, he would go knowing he had lived fully, loved completely, and found in Kate everything he had ever hoped for and more than he had ever dreamed possible. Their story ended not with drama, but with contentment. Not with grand gestures, but with the simple, profound satisfaction of a life shared, and a love that had endured. The drifter had found her home, the cowboy had found his heart, and together they had created something that would echo through generations. Proof that sometimes the best things in life come from taking a chance on a stranger, from offering help when it is not asked for, from seeing the person beneath the dust and the weariness and recognizing them as exactly what you need.